Ladies and gentlemen, very, very good afternoon to you, and thank you very much for joining us. This is the first of our brand new series of BRTuk Lunchtime Masterclasses supported by Atkins, in which Peter Shelley will talk to us about his experience with BSIPs, but more about that in a minute. Now, you will have noticed that I've just pressed the record button, so we should be capturing the whole session for people to watch afterwards. As I say,
can I do that too, please, James?
You can, yes, certainly. Just do what you wish, John. But
I've got to ask your permission.
Right, but please then mute yourself if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be saying to everybody, except Peter Shelley, obviously, please mute yourselves at all times, if you don't mind. If you want to communicate, do so through the chat, and we will be using the chat for the questions. So I'm James Freeman. I'm chairing today's session and indeed the whole program over the coming weeks. I've been chair of BRTuk since early last year when I retired as managing director of First West of England, based in Bristol. For those that don't know, BRTuk is, we think of ourselves anyway, as a ginger group, created more than 15 years ago by the redoubtable Bob Tebb, whom I always refer to as the father of bus rapid transit in the UK. Our purpose is to spread knowledge and good practice in the field, not just of BRT, but for high quality bus operations across the board. These lunchtime masterclasses are one of the unlikely dividends of COVID, although we do have ambitions to run a live event in the autumn, having been defeated by Omicron in our desire for a spring event earlier this year. Meanwhile, here we are, just an hour at lunchtime on a Thursday, starting today and running through to the beginning of July. Short and sharp, we will be done by 13:30. Those of you who saw the first series of lunchtime masterclasses will notice some minor changes this time. For a start, each session is a simple Zoom run by me. Also, Passenger Transport is our media partner, and we've received support for our advertising from Atkins. So let me now introduce Peter. I first met Peter when he was at Solent Blue Line, and I was MD of the neighbouring People's Provincial Buses. Now that was in 1987 or thereabouts, so I realise I've known him for 35 years. Bit scary. He's still a young chap anyway, even if I'm not. Peter has extensive experience of passenger transport from both the local authority and commercial sectors, dating back to before deregulation. He is one of those who has driven a bus full time, and after moving to Southampton with a friend and colleague, he set up Solent Blue Line, which went on to become the award-winning Blue Star, which I continue from my personal experience, as I now live here in Winchester, is still very much around and very good actually. Peter spent 10 years as head of passenger transport for Hampshire County Council, where he was responsible for a budget of £50 million. And he's currently Rapid Transit Development Manager for the £100 million bus-based South East Hampshire Rapid Transit Scheme. And he's been closely involved with the BSIP process in the Portsmouth area. And so he's exceptionally well qualified to talk about it all. I noticed that he's taken as his title, Be Careful What You Wish For. So I sense that this is going to be a combination of good news and, well, we'll see. So we'll control the time strictly. We have between now and 1:30 for Peter to talk, but also for a discussion through the chat to answer your points and questions. So please do put them in the chat, and I'll endeavour to bring them out and put them to Peter. The programme, as we've said, is being recorded, not just by me, but also, as you will have heard, by John Carr. That's because we find that people really appreciate coming back to look at it afterwards. So now, please, can you make sure that you are muted? I think it looks pretty good to me. Thank you very much indeed for your cooperation in all of that. And Peter, I have facilitated the screen sharing facility, so it's my very great pleasure to welcome you as our first lunchtime masterclass speaker this Thursday. Over to you.
James, thank you for a wonderful introduction. I almost didn't recognize myself. Let's see now if the next bit of the techie bit works and we get to share my screen with you. And I'll rely on James to tell me if he's got something other than the black screen I can see in front of me.
It's very exciting, this bit. It's the most, it's the second most exciting bit after finding that whether Peter's actually joined the call at all. Yes, we've got screen sharing showing.
Yeah.
And we look like we've got your, yes, we're now looking at your screen, and there's your front screen, and all you want to do is go, there you are.
Right. Oh, good.
Yeah, you're in business.
My screen's gone blank now, but hopefully you can still see something. Ooh.
Yes, we are. Now our screen's gone blank. It was, now it's back again.
All right, good.
So we can see Portsmouth BSIP, BRTuk, and the date today.
Well, that's great, thanks. Well, I'm really delighted to talk to everybody today about Portsmouth City Council, how we put our BSIP plan in, and how in April this was awarded an indicative funding of 48.3 million, the largest award outside a combined authority area, as I understand it. Probably a key phrase there is indicative funding. We haven't got the money yet, as I have to explain to councillors. In this talk, I can tell you what we did, but I can't tell you why we won. Only the Department for Transport can answer that. I will also tell you why I think Portsmouth was well placed for the bid, and be honest about the disadvantages that the city faced. So first, I'll set out the context and address the title of my talk. And I know just about everyone in the call will know this, but just to recap, the National Bus Strategy, Bus Back Better, was launched in March last year. It's an ambitious proposal to tackle the historical barriers to greater bus use, which I think everybody would endorse. But the effects of the pandemic mean that it's needed more than ever, though the impacts on travel patterns and demand for bus travel over the last 2 years are really a significant challenge. In some ways, it was a case of be careful what you wish for. For bus operators, it addressed concerns over traffic congestion and lack of priority measures. And for local authorities, it promised cooperative bus operators and the opportunity to influence bus fares and service levels. But to get these priorities, the bus operators would have to listen to and work with councils. Not that the best don't already do so. While councils would have new responsibilities for traffic management and delivering bus reliability and bus lanes. Bus lanes are always a challenge, as anybody who's worked with local authorities will know, and the bus operators will see the benefit. Okay. The Portsmouth bid was for £92.2 million over 3 years, the 3 years to 2025, with a high priority for quick wins, boosting bus use and delivering to hard to reach groups, as well as winning new users. Very much a kickstart approach. Included targeted fares reductions, and tickets valid on both the city's bus operators, First and Stagecoach, were proposed. Now, Portsmouth, as many of you know, has really had two operators over the years, really back through the 1930s. In those days, it was the Corporation and Southdown. But something that came back strongly from our customer research, residents' surveys, was the desire to have a ticket you could easily use on both. Discounts for under 19s, families, job seekers, and hard to reach groups. A 90-minute hopper ticket and cheaper evening fares and more frequent services were in the list, with journeys starting at 4:30 in the morning through till 11 at night on key services, and through till 1 in the morning on Friday and Saturday, with more Sunday buses. Nothing very exciting there, very much following DFT approach. We wanted to go for tap-on, tap-off ticketing, better on-bus information, RTI every stop. We've already got it about just over half the stops, more bus priorities, and bus stops which offer better access for both users and the buses themselves. More ambitious proposals on the list, we were told to be ambitious, included network-wide conversion to electric buses, a multi-operator electric bus depot, and of course, dynamic demand-responsive transport. The network-wide conversion to electric buses and a multi-operator bus depot will have to wait for a further funding stream. The plan for a longer operating day remains, but increased frequencies have been paused until the national driver situation improves. So what did I see as Portsmouth's advantage when it came to BSIP? Well, the City Council has a proven record of effective partnership working with bus operators, neighbouring authorities, and the Department for Transport. And that stretches all the way back to the 1990s. James was saying how long he and I have known each other. And it's similarly, there's been a lot of partnership working. That started with a BRT project, the A3 ZIP bus rapid transit corridor between Horndean and Waterlooville in Hampshire and Portsmouth city centre. Work started on the ground in 2002 with a lot of government funding, and the busway opened in 2008 at a cost of 34.5 million plus 2.8 million operator investment in new buses. And that bus fleet has been replaced twice over since, so all credit to First that they've stuck to their promise on that. And it's noteworthy, and we put it strongly in our report, today this remains the one corridor into Portsmouth where bus times are quicker than they were 20 years ago. Since then, we've deployed funding from successful bids to the Better Buses Area Fund and the Local Sustainable Transport Fund, following joint bids with bus operators and neighbouring authorities. Different funding sources, but the same objectives. In 2014, Portsmouth Park and Ride opened at a cost of £28 million, which included a new motorway junction, which probably took a lot of that budget, to open up the neighbouring area for development. Providing almost 500,000 passenger trips a year before the pandemic, we are now looking at increasing capacity at the site. In 2017, the Hard interchange opened at a cost of £9.2 million, linking bus, coach, rail and ferry services, as well as the adjacent Gunwharf Quays retail, leisure and residential development, and Portsmouth Historic Dockyard. Not a trophy project, but a practical investment used by 7 million passengers a year pre-COVID. In 2020, Portsmouth, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight were awarded 55.6 million through the Transforming Cities Fund towards the South East Hampshire Rapid Transit Scheme, which with partner investment, including the bus operators, is worth over £100 million towards a bus rapid transit system across the area and fast ferry links to the Isle of Wight. In 2021, we were able to piggyback on a visit to First Hampshire, Dorset and Berkshire, partnership working in action, by Transport Minister Baroness Veer. And we're able to show her the park and ride site, extensive bus priority measures, and the impressive well-used interchange at the Hard, which she thought was an unusual name. I was able to say that no doubt she was often asked to sign cheques, but we welcomed the opportunity to show the Minister projects delivered on the ground and being well used. Mark Reddy at First had already shown the Minister the A3 corridor, now badged the Star, and the ever impressive Eclipse BRT. On the 26th of March this year, Portsmouth with Hampshire were awarded £6.5 million towards 34 new electric buses, so that two of our busiest routes, the 1 and the 3, accounting for over 1 in 5 bus journeys in the clean air zone, will go fully electric from 2024. So a variety of funding schemes, but the same long-term objective with a 10-year horizon, as you can see on screen, hopefully, and a proven track record of partnership working and effective delivery. So what disadvantages did Portsmouth face in bidding? The answer is geography. Portsmouth is on the south coast, in what can be seen as the affluent south, and bus use is lower than other south coast cities. Portsmouth is the UK's only island city, with housing density that matches parts of central London. Victorian terraces and flat terrain mean that many journeys are within walking distance, whilst a limited road network means that bus speeds are low. Portsmouth was very badly hit as a military objective in World War II, so much post-war housing took place outside the city boundary in Lee Park and Waterlooville in Havant, with journeys of up to 6 miles from the city centre. Slower journey times reduced access to work as congestion worsens. And you can see on the map there that Portsmouth is effectively the blob in the middle, and Waterlooville, as an example, is right at the top of the map. So it's a very long travel to work journey. Shifts in post-war employment mean that deprivation is high in some wards. And the island geography means that pre-pandemic, up to 5 million journeys a year were made by ferry, many of which would have been on the bus in other cities. So we need to say why there's a challenge, but that context needs to be set out clearly, but tempered by a positive story that bus use in Portsmouth rose by 5% in the 2 years to 2020 and was close to a 20-year high at 12 million journeys. The constrained road network, air quality concerns. Portsmouth has had a clean air zone since November last year. Health outcomes and disparity in life expectancy, combined with substantial 15-year jobs and housing targets, would mean gridlock across the transport network if the bus was unable to play its proper role. So for men, one of the headlines there is that life expectancy is 8.3 years lower than the national average. So what was our approach? Again, I can only set out what we did, and as many people on the call will probably have done just the same. I can't say why we were selected. The Portsmouth approach included a number of elements. Answer the exam question. Every proposal was aligned with the 4 BSIP objectives to reduce journey time, improve reliability, increase passenger numbers, and improve satisfaction. Always remember your audiences. DFT statisticians. Number 10, the Treasury. Provide the data to support your submission. Work across the authority as we did on health, social care, economy and educational attainment. Use ONS data and publish research to support your proposals. Interesting fact, there a reduction in effective workforce availability as the population within a 40-minute journey time shrinks due to congestion. Very impactful from our area, reducing job opportunities and the workforce available to employers. Ask residents and other stakeholders what their priorities are before drafting proposals and using these to develop the plan. We were very fortunate. Our engagement team was able to do, went out, did a resident survey through a number of channels. In July, we had 1,100 responses plus 32 in-depth interviews with key stakeholders and businesses. And that really gave us a democratic mandate and showed that what we were doing was what residents wanted. That was useful in discussions with the department and with members. And it wasn't just some sort of textbook theory. Co-design. We worked with the bus operators through every stage to final sign-off. We captured their professional knowledge and learned from what they had learned elsewhere. And I would always say, take an active part in groups such as ATCO, CILT and BRTuk. We've never been too proud to copy other people's good ideas, but it's really good to share professional knowledge. Take the politicians with you. Reflect the priorities that their residents raise with them. And change your proposals as needed. Keep them close. Don't assume because they liked an idea last year, they will like it now. Learn from your mistakes. And no surprises. Keep them informed every step of the way. We used the feedback from the DFT and their consultants to improve the bid as it went on. And make sure you are sufficiently resourced. In this case, using the DFT funding provided. Use consultants to bring expertise and capacity. Portsmouth City Council has a long-standing relationship with Atkins, and Matt Gamble worked closely with us on our bid. Our previous work on the Transforming Cities Fund and work we were doing for the Levelling Up Fund meant that we had a lot of data to hand on deprivation, health, journey times and interventions, and also the team in place to develop our bid. The latest chapter. The indicative funding award of 4th of April 48.3 million against a proposed spend of 92.2 million came with updated DFT priorities. In some ways it was a rebid and it had a return date of the 3rd of May. Originally the 2nd of May till it was spotted that was a bank holiday. And as it says on screen there, this followed quite a bit of toing and froing with the DFT in January and February, including a meeting with Councillor Stagg, our transport portfolio holder, the bus MDs, and the team with representatives from DFT, number 10, and the Treasury back in January. Kept us on our toes. So what do they want now? The top DFT priority for capital spend, which is 33.8 million out of the 48.3 million for Portsmouth, was not surprisingly bus priority. And as I said before, we've lessons to learn here about member engagement and the need to ameliorate impacts on residential parking, green spaces and trees. Audits and alternatives are needed if members are to be kept on board and residents and schemes delivered. It's not a good look for a new environmentally friendly scheme if you start taking out trees. For revenue, which was 14.5 million for Portsmouth, DfT wants to see ambitious and eye-catching initiatives that reduce and/or simplify fares at pace, to use the phrase of the time, and increase service frequencies, new and expanded routes, better evening and weekend services, routes that serve new priorities like employment sites, and new demand responsive transport. As I said before, though, we're pausing frequently uplifts, but we will look to reach unserved areas and introduce DRT. DRT does not expect BSIP to fund any schemes where it's not a bus scheme, so they don't want a traffic scheme with a bit of red tarmac in the corner. Generic marketing or advertising costs, provision of on-bus hardware such as CCTV or audio-visual equipment, and investment in existing infrastructure unless there's evidence that it directly tackles barriers to bus use. So you can't just have a new set of bus shelters for the sake of it. We are pushing back for funding on bus hardware, including tap-on, tap-off ticketing, which we see as key to simplifying the offer to win new passengers, reduce stop times, and ensure accurate recording and revenue apportionment for our range of targeted fares discounts. And the latter point is an important one, where we're looking to keep the commerciality of the local bus services. They can keep their own fares ranges. We just want to have some new multi-operators tickets in there. But if they're going to be sharing an increasing proportion of their revenue with each other, they want to make sure that they get their right share of that. And we need better ticket machines to make sure that happens. Similarly, we see the need for improved on-bus audio visual. We like the sort of things you see on the red arrows or on Transdev, which not only tell you how your journey is going and when it's going to get into town, but how the connections are going. And in our case, we want to show connecting bus, ferry, rail and coach services. We see this as very important to reassure passengers, especially new users, and really to sell the idea of an integrated island city network. We're hoping to include operator match funding on this to strengthen our case. So it's a good test of partnership. So from April the 4th, the team worked with bus operators and senior councillors to develop a list of 48 updated proposals, a subset of our October 2021 submission, and submitted these on the 29th of April. And within capacity and deliverability limits, many of these are planned for year one. And yes, we're in year one now, to deliver benefits early to residents. And we really need something to show for this. It's all right asking to dig people's streets up, but they're much happier if you say, well, the fares are getting cheaper from next week. And boost bus use, which would be good for the city and for operators, as well as producing results for DfT. Next steps, you will have seen this slide before if you were paying attention. So our proposals now back with DfT for further consideration include a list of targeted fares reductions to increase bus use and meet the residents' top priority. This will give us a quick win and help bring passengers to the bus, hopefully give us a more sustainable network come October, as well as supporting wider inclusion, social care and health objectives. These will sit aside operators' own tickets, as I've said, not least because the operators run outside the Portsmouth area and we don't want to handicap what they can do. I've mentioned that tap-on, tap-off ticketing is at the heart of our proposal. We're still looking for earlier and later journeys to improve access to work and support the nighttime economy. And we're looking to add new bus lanes totaling 2.4 kilometres, building on the 9.8 kilometres we already have and work currently underway with TCF. And we're putting a strong emphasis on a good engagement and communications with the community to take them with us on this. A simpler win, we're looking to redo the red surface on our existing bus lanes to reinforce their importance. And to show the importance of priorities, they're going to be supported by new camera enforcement, dedicated bus lanes, civil enforcement officers, and a tow-away scheme, which hopefully after it's taken the leader's Maserati away a couple of times, it will get good publicity. Only joking, he doesn't have a Maserati. So one of the other things we're looking to do, which our traffic colleagues have developed, is the wider rollout of smart traffic signals to help deliver better bus journey times. These are great, really, and they can be really effective on a very confined network like Portsea Island, and they're, let's be honest, they're less contentious. We want to see new bus stop layouts to improve bus and passenger access and speed journeys. This may be about bus borders, or the approach angle to the bus laybys, or removing that litter bin, which always seems to be in your way when you want to get off the bus. And this really goes to reinforce the SEHRT aim of cutting journey times by 20%. Residents asked for RTI at every stop, so that's in our bid, as is improved bus stop environment and safety features. And we're looking at some stop cameras and help points. We're going to take some work from the local cycling and walking investment project to improve the first mile, last mile, so it's actually safe and convenient to get from your house or workplace to and from the buses. I've mentioned the improved audio visual to show connections. And an early result will be a visible customer charter to say who to contact, what happens if things do go wrong, and what redress they can expect. And we're looking at network information on maps every stop and on every bus. Dynamic demand responsive transport had to be in there. We are realistic. We read Roger's blog. Entertainingly, even the Competition and Markets Authority cautioned about DRT viability in their response to our draft EP. But we're going to build on work we're involved in with taxi shares in Hampshire, and also look to reach the parts other public transport cannot reach using small vehicles with a blend of semi-scheduled and on-demand. And we may be able to tie in with Solent Transport's Future Transport Zone Award for the back office software. When we added all this up, our proposals totaled £5,000 less than the indicative funding total. So it was very much bottom up rather than top down. We didn't want DFT to think it was some sort of supermarket dash and that we were spending money for the sake of it. So where are we now? Well, May is allowing us further discussion of our proposals with DFT. We had a series of questions back. We replied to those. We've had more questions. We have a meeting with them coming up next week. The intention is that our updated draft EP will be ready by the end of June. We intend to place this before Cabinet for approval in June to make sure that we continue to take members with us. So in summary, we live in interesting times and face tight schedules. We're happy to be dealing with the problems of success and the opportunity for significant investment. Did Portsmouth get what it wished for? I think so, but nobody said it would be easy. As many of you will know, Portsmouth is the home of the Royal Navy, and there is a saying in the Royal Navy: if you can't take a joke, you shouldn't have joined. And that spirit lives on. Happy to take questions. Thank you.
Peter, thank you. I think just sitting and listening to the comprehensive story that you've been telling probably tells us a lot about why you've been so successful in getting things to come your way. So I suppose I found myself thinking, how did this come about? How did this singularity of purpose actually really, where was its genesis?
I think the whole of South Hampshire, Transport for South Hampshire, it used to be in Solent Transport. There is a history of cross-border working. I used to be at Hampshire and we worked with Portsmouth and Southampton. It became Solent Transport. We brought in the Isle of Wight. There's been a long-term bus involvement between the bus operators and the authorities, something I really pushed when I was head of passenger transport at Hampshire to get, and we used to have regular meetings with the bus MDs around the table with the executive member. So both parties would understand what the others needed. It's very easy to fire off emails or stay at a distance and just be annoyed by things that go wrong. But that built a very positive relationship. And over the years, the various authorities have bid for different funding streams, usually on a cross-border basis, because passengers don't care what the authority is. They go where their work is or where the shops are. And we built a reputation with the department that if they found money in the draw on Friday afternoon, we would deliver. And I think that's has given them confidence to give us funding on different occasions. And I think the relationships mean that we've done, by and large over the years, practical things which are useful, whether it was USB things or better AV on buses or what have you. And I think that's built a basis of trust. When I was in Hampshire, I was able to use some unallocated BSOG money, which with match funding with the operators meant that Hampshire, Portsmouth and Southampton went contactless in early in 2017, before parts of Greater Manchester even. Shock horror.
Yes.
So, and I think we started from a good place. I think the other thing is that we're lucky in Portsmouth. I mean, Portsmouth councillors probably have the same view of buses as most administrations, a sort of love-hate relationship. Some don't use it and they get in the way. Some only hear about it when their residents complain. But there is a recognition that buses can play a key part in dealing with those health and economy issues that I mentioned. So I think this is our best chance now to prove we can deliver across all those different objectives. And that's been our approach, really, to say it's about health and the economy. It's about the nighttime economy. It's about social inclusion. It's not just about a shiny bus.
Okay, yes, thank you very much indeed. So everybody, we've got about 20 minutes really to ask Peter questions on what he's been telling us. And thank you to Rachel Phillips for starting the ball rolling. So Rachel's question, Peter, is this. Just a question on timescale, she says. You mentioned starting the EP process in July. Have you already been through the OOP and consultation processes, etc., or is this what you will be starting in July?
Good question, Rachel. Well, in fact, we did everything, statutory consultation, operator consultation, ready really to launch on the revised date of 29th of April, but that got overtaken by our events. So we didn't actually officially make the EP. So our plan is really to rerun that process. That's what our legal people say is a safe approach. I think we know what the answers are from Transport Focus and from CMA. The bus operators are with us every stage of the way. So we will restart that process, but our view is that we can probably start a lot of these things in advance of that once we have the sign off and somebody sends us a check.
Good, thank you very much. Moving on then, Roger French, whom you've already, I noticed, made peace with earlier in your presentation. Roger asks, how far do DFT go in going into detail in approving proposals? For example, are they insisting in getting involved in each ticket price reduction, or do they trust you to deliver the principles of reduced pricing as you've described?
I don't know is the answer. They've not really asked us much about that. So far, their main interest is on the detail of the bus priorities, because we've said we will probably need to revisit those. Most of them we did right through the feasibility stage. I think we probably even know where the statutory things are, so we don't dig holes in the ground through electric cables. But that was before the change in cycle provision, which affects road space you need. So, and we said we'll want to revisit that. And they're worried about that. So they want all the details about our bus priorities. They've not asked about the details about tickets, which might be a good thing. We did a very detailed reply to the CMA. We're not looking to stop the commercial products. We're looking to, where there are joint operator products, to be very closely above the commercial market price. But we don't want a big premium. We want people to be able to choose those, but it's probably going to be an ongoing process, whether they'll ask for more detail as life goes on. But we declared that to the CMA last time around, and that was before any DFT involvement. So I would see us rerunning that. If we need the operators to invest in the fleet, which we can't afford to, we need them to have a commercial business. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Right, folks, don't forget, you've got the opportunity to put your questions in the chat. We need to keep a flow going, otherwise this conversation will be shortchanging you. So do think up what you need to know, take you away. Meanwhile, John Carr, pursuing a similar line of attack maybe to Rogers, is saying, excellent overview, Peter. To what extent would I be right in thinking the department is trying to micromanage and override local priorities?
I don't think they are, John. I think the fact that we were able to say these are local priorities has got us, part of what has got us to where we are now. So they're not asking us to change things around. We don't know really. We've got a meeting next Wednesday. That may change, but up till now they've been seeking clarification. They've not rejected anything that we've put in there. They've wanted reassurance that things we put in there are really going to happen. So in a month's time I might know differently, but I think they're happy that it's locally based. Otherwise, they're going to be overturning the work we've done with members, with residents, and with operators if that was their approach to change things. But we've had no inkling so far that it is.
What about political change and the sort of way things move never mind the specifics of what you're doing here, but in the background, that can change the way your members feel about things. Where are you with that?
I think we got our fingers burnt really on the South East Hampshire Rapid Transit Project, Transforming Cities Fund, which is sort of about to start digging up roads very shortly. That we handed it over to the engineers who have done a fabulous job, but we perhaps didn't keep the engagement going as strongly as we should with members. And I think particularly after not this year's election, but last year's election, there was a strong pushback really about anti-car measures like cycling through COVID. So the administration now is very cautious about anything that impacts on residents parking.
Yes.
And that's why I say we're going to be very careful about that. We're going to do audits where we can find out how they're used, where we can provide substitutes, and hopefully that will get us through. But you're right. I mean, the administration will change. There's be 2 more elections in the remaining time this is being delivered. We're hoping that by engaging as widely as possible, we have people with us. But of course, it gets reviewed every 6 months. That's part of the requirement. So if residents tell us, or Transport Focus, or what have you, we will perhaps swerve neatly to whatever the new direction is.
Yes, I think it's what's interesting to me is listening throughout your presentation, keeping people with you has been a major priority, and I'm sure that's what bears fruit. Okay, moving on. Patrick Warner, Peter, can you share more of thinking about your DRT? Hang on a minute. This question has just disappeared off my screen. DRT proposal and what your long-term thinking is on its sustainability.
Well, as I said, I read Roger French's blog. I've yet to see one that's fully sustainable. I was totally amused. We had this dialogue with Competition and Markets Authority and all this, checking about, is this prejudicial or is it offset by other good things? What are we doing about fares? And then there was this line in there suggesting that, many authorities are considering demand responsive transport, but it would, be a good value to look at existing experience. So they're obviously worried that people are spending money to no benefit. Oh. There are two strands to our proposals for DRT. One is 2 schemes, the one into Port Solent, which is a nice waterside marina development, but with some older population, which is slightly off the bus network. Half it's within walking distance, the other half isn't. And Whale Island, which is a Royal Navy installation, which again is about a mile off the public highway. So we're looking at possibly doing a work time shuttle into the latter and shopping type or connecting to main services on the former. My intention there, our intention is to go for a sort of Hampshire taxi style approach, using a taxi or a 8-seater, runs to a timetable, only runs when somebody books it. We're going to do some surveys, which Solent Transport are nicely paying for, using another bit of government money, to find out what people want or what they will use. And we're very cautious about any engagement because people will say yes, because they think their neighbour will love it, even if they're never going to use it. That's half it. The other half is, and we've got a lot of money for conventional bus and a slightly smaller amount for DRT for unserved areas. So it could be the industrial estates, it could be the bits off the network. We haven't quite finalised what we're doing on that. Solent Transport got money for a back office type approach. I think some of the members would like to see something which in other areas might be called dial-a-ride, which we don't have. So we'll try and be clever. We certainly want software that allows scheduled in there. That was a lesson from Pick Me Up in Oxford. It might be something like I did in Solent Blue Line days, where a bus between peak trips does different things on different days of the week, so you can get into the shops and what have you. We haven't finalised, but we will be cautious whether there's enough money to buy a minibus or whether we'll be hiring in something that's already there. Time will tell. Good. But we are looking something that hopefully, probably never be, so sort of services probably never completely sustainable, but hopefully carrying enough people that somebody will feel sorry and find the budget.
Thank you. Switching topics slightly, Matt asks, does the fact that your neighbour Hampshire didn't get funding have an impact on what you're doing? The Star presumably gets out of your patch on its northernmost bit, does it? But does that make a difference?
You're right, the Star, I mean, the bulk of the Star works were in Hampshire, and then it sort of arrived into a nice bit of traffic congestion when it hit Portsmouth City Council area. That is true. We're looking to correct that with the SEHRT works. DFT are quite interested in cross-border impacts. So in our BSIP, we cited works that Hampshire were bidding for, which would affect journeys into Portsmouth. And they've said, well, how is that now going to affect things? And we had to say that 3 out of the 4 are actually currently unfunded because they didn't win their BSIP. We will work closely with them. What we're doing on ticketing, if we succeed, we'll certainly tip cross-border. If there is some sensible money that will allow them to move like us onto the up to age 19, because a lot of Portsmouth residents live in Hampshire, we'll look at that. So we're within sensible budget limits, we will work very closely with them. And we have a lot of new friends now, funnily enough, with the possibility of this money coming.
Yes, I can imagine. Yes, absolutely. Moving on then, is there a relationship between the BSIP projects, Ask Daniel McCall, and the Solent Future Transport Zone programme? Will all bus services be made available on the FTZ Mars app?
There is a relationship. We're part of Solent Transport, so the new Breeze app, the mobility as a service app for Solent Transport, which is sort of soft testing or something. I think you can hook into it if you want to at the moment. Yes, all the bus services should be on there, and the trains and the ferries and e-scooters and all the other forms of transport. Where I'm cautious, and we wouldn't want to duplicate work that's already going ahead, we're trying to do things like the discount fares as easily accessible as possible, where people don't have to be signing up for complicated apps and this sort of thing. We are looking at some method for hard to reach groups, those who don't go out the house, so that they can be encouraged to use service. And we want to follow the approach that some operators already have, where there's something on your phone that you're pre-registered and it immediately shows you're eligible for a discount when you get on the bus, so you don't have to be waving a card and looking poor and this sort of thing. But yeah, we're working very closely with them, but it's about outcomes, not about processes, I guess, is our approach. Right, thank you very much. Rob Jack from Passenger Transport asked a question about passenger numbers. He says passenger numbers for 2025-26 are targeted at 12 million, which is the same as 2019-20. What chances are there that you could get beyond that? Is it a sign of the times that we find ourselves running to stand still? Very interesting question, actually. No, I think that's a good question. We work closely with the operators on this. We didn't want something that was eye-catching but undeliverable. And we've got a long way to go, really, to get back to 2019-20 targets. So we've said the target is 100% and a stretch target is 110%. I mean, we're going to, subject to the money coming in, we're going to be moving very quickly on fares, which we see as a very key way of getting numbers up. I mean, you know, it's not rocket science. Lots of people on the call have done these things. We got below national income levels in Portsmouth, and whilst we want to maintain the commerciality of the fares, if we can attract new trips by sharper prices for families in the evenings, getting young, you know, they get the cheap fares all the time, they're in further education, this sort of thing, we think that is a way to get the numbers. But we will start to know very quickly. And where are patronage levels at the moment? I mean, how far have the operators got back to, you know, pre-COVID levels? We get different numbers. It bounces around. It's sort of, I say across the whole network in the low 80s of where it was, but from within that, concessions are at a lower level. That's interesting, isn't it? And I think that's afternoon tea parties are obviously needed to get our older residents out on the buses. Yes, it does seem to me that there's a huge effort required generally to get the patronage to get back anywhere near where it was, 100% of what it was anyway. So yeah, very interesting. Another question for you, but Kenneth Townsend, who incidentally was one of the first people on the call not long after 12:15, says, is it possible to get a recording of this session, or is it saved on Zoom? No, it will be a separate recording, which will be a link accessible off our website. It will be available from the middle of next week. So, and there, of course, it does record all the questions and chat, because quite a lot of the things in the chat are comments that people have usefully put in answering other comments, if you like, which I haven't yet
tended to pick up on. Are there any other questions that people have as opposed to comments? Just coming back to a question that John Carr asked earlier, how does Solent Transport work?
Avoids witty answer at that point, yes.
Yes, quite so.
I think in a way it's almost capturing what I've said has been our success in this bid. It's by doing things together which are better done together. So it plays a key part in transport for the Southeast. It provides the back office and support via partner authorities for, say, the Solent Go. Solent Travel Card was the first multi-operator ticket back in 2013 or whenever it was, and then it moved on to smart cards. So they bring that together, and the operators have sort of balanced this by setting up South Hampshire Bus Operators Association. So there's two parties that can do a lot of things together, and work that they do a lot of work on railways, which is less key to my predominant work area. But the work they've done on ticketing, Solent Go has been the basis of multi-operator ticketing. That may well be how we deliver our multi-operator ticketing. That's still to be finalised. And again, something like Breeze coming along with bringing all the different transport modes together. That's great. We will champion that. So they have some expertise. They have some additional officer resource, which the individual authorities don't always have.
Interesting. Kenneth Townsend has come back with a quite different sort of question, actually. The government's quite keen on e-scooters, aren't they, at the moment? And Portsmouth is one of the places where e-scooters have been trialed, is that right?
It is.
What do you think the introduction of e-scooters in Portsmouth has had in the way of influence on bus use?
It's interesting. I was being shown something this week from a company called Via Nova, which actually maps journeys, not live due to DDR reasons, DPDR or whatever, GPDR. But we want to understand to what extent does it highlight routes which buses should be providing, to what extent are people using it for first mile, last mile to the public transport network, and also in terms of the scooters themselves, are there roads which aren't being used that we probably need to take a closer look at, that people don't feel safe to use them. I don't see it as a major competitor for bus services. I mean, a lot of our people are traveling with bags and shopping and this sort of thing, and I've not seen a very easy way to do that on a scooter. The demographics, the number of over 50s, which probably just includes you and me, James, the number of over 50s using these e-scooters is very low, and they want to look at that, but I guess people are more worried that they'll have a fall and the impacts of the fall. From a point of view, anything that gets people out who wouldn't get out or keeps them out of cars, we see as a good thing.
Yes, that's the interesting point, isn't it? And it's probably picking out of the pedestrian market to quite an extent, isn't it? It must be shorter journeys that are attractive. I don't know. When I was in the west of England, we had the same. We had e-scooters available across the patch, and it seemed to me that the people who were using them were actually not our basic passengers anyway. So they were doing different things. But it's quite an anarchic form of transport, isn't it? To some extent.
Can be.
So right now, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a couple more minutes. If you have any other questions that you would like to ask, this is your opportunity. The chat is open, and you can put anything in that you wish. But you do need to be tapping away at those keys right now, because in just a minute or two we'll have come to the end of today's fascinating presentation. I must say, you do get the sense, don't you, that when people say, well, why do some people succeed at things and others don't? When you start listening at what's been done, you realize that some of these things are very basic. Answer the question. Very interesting comment that Peter made. Answer the question accurately and closely. That seems to me to be quite fundamental, and not something that everybody all does. But this has got to be about determination, hasn't it, Peter? Really, I mean, you, your colleagues, your politicians wanted this to happen and have worked together to make it happen. And that's the thing that
I think so. I mean, The national bus strategy priorities are very similar to the South East Hampshire rapid transit priorities. So our politicians and across all the authorities are very much signed up for this. And as I've said, we've got a 10-year time span. So whether it's levelling up funding or whatever, we'll be going after the different funding sources. What I can't answer, and I've heard comments in other forums from really, reputable authorities and colleagues I know who will have worked hard. I can't say why we were successful and others weren't. I can say, had we not been successful this time, we'd have been rewriting it and popping it in for the levelling up fund or whatever comes along next.
So a last question from Roger French, typically sets the whole thing on fire. No, can we look forward to a comprehensive printed bus map for the whole area, widely available?
Portsmouth has a comprehensive printed bus map. We've asked for DFT funding to make it even more widely available. I would like it to be probably a little bit more adventurous than it is now. But yes, well, we hope for that. We still see a very strong vote. We're doing a lot of bus stop publicity. So it's not just your service, but it's the network and its fares. And yes, our bus map did actually get mentioned a couple of times in our BSIP bid. So Roger's on the money there.
That was a good answer, Peter. Thank you very much indeed. Well, now I'm afraid it's 1:25. So bearing in mind that we are absolutely committed to being finished and done by 1:30, we've come to that moment where Peter can stand down, he can relax. And it's time for me to wrap up this afternoon's presentation. Well, thank you, Peter, for sharing your knowledge and doing so in a very inspiring way. And what's been a truly fascinating session. And thanks to all of you, our audience, for your interest, for coming on the Zoom at all, and for your comments and questions. Don't forget, as we've said several times, that this program has been recorded, it's still being recorded, and will be available through the BRT UK website. So I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our media partner, Rob Jack at Passenger Transport, who's going to be reporting on these sessions as they unfold. Also, many thanks to Ray Stenning at The Great Best Impressions, who produced the advert that in absolute double quick time, pretty well overnight. And also many thanks to our friends at Atkins who have been supporting the whole thing. I should also mention my colleagues, Patrick Warner and John Carr, BRT board members who've been working to ensure that you received the Zoom link today, and we'll do the same each week. I'm sorry that our events at BRT UK email address has the unnerving habit of telling you that your email has not been received when actually we have received it and are actioning it, but we're trying to work on that. But please watch out in the next edition of Passenger Transport, which comes out a fortnight today, to see how they have interpreted this week's and next week's session, which brings me to next week, Thursday, 26th of May, in the second of these lunchtime masterclasses supported by Atkins, Angela Hosford and Tom Skidmore from Transport for West Midlands will be telling us all about Sprint, which is BRT in the West Midlands. Remember, these BRT UK masterclasses go on every week until July the 7th, with a break after next week for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. If you've already registered, you'll be sent the link again. So do join us at 12:30 next week. And of course, please do spread the word. So Peter, thank you again for working to explain to us why it is that your authorities have achieved all this funding and with your successful BSIP. And thanks to all of you, our audience. And this is me, James Freeman, signing off for BRT until next week. Cheerio, and thank you very much indeed. Bye.
Bye-bye now.